Listen, have you ever stopped to think that maybe what you've been searching for is right in front of you? I'm not talking about a coincidence or something you need to force. I'm talking about something that simply happens when you are ready. And you know what's most curious? Many times we don't notice it because we're distracted, stuck in the past, or expecting something different from what we actually need. The truth is that love arrives without warning, but it doesn't find space if you are full of barriers. So, tell me, are you really open? Or are you letting your insecurities, your unrealistic expectations, or even past disappointments blind you? Because sometimes, what prevents you from experiencing something extraordinary is precisely that resistance, that fear of surrendering again. Maybe you have already crossed paths with this person. Maybe not yet. But before anything else, you need to understand that love is not going to solve your problems or fill the voids you haven't had the courage to face yet. It will, yes, transform you, challenge you, but not before you allow it. And that requires courage. Courage to look around, to step out of your comfort zone, and above all, to let go of this notion that you don't deserve it, or that it will never happen. I know you feel that something is different. Maybe you can't explain it yet, but there is a change, an energy, a sensation that things are aligning. Now the question is, are you going to ignore this, or will you trust that your time has come? I want you to stop and reflect for a moment. Honestly, are you prepared to receive what you desire so much? Because love, true love, is not something that arrives without shaking up your foundations. It will throw you off balance, challenge your beliefs, and make you face parts of yourself that you may have been avoiding for a long time. Are you ready for this? You might be thinking, but I've already opened up. I've already waited. I've already made an effort. Is that really so? Or are you stuck in cycles of frustration because deep down you still expect something that fits your molds, your standards? Life doesn't work like that. The love that transforms, that elevates, that truly makes you feel complete, doesn't follow your rules. It is unpredictable. It will appear in ways that you might not even recognize at first. And do you know why? Because love doesn't seek perfection. It seeks truth. And for it to enter your life, you need to be honest with yourself. You need to look at everything you are carrying, fears, traumas, hurts, and decide that you are ready to let it go. Are you willing? Or will you continue waiting for something magical to happen while you keep the same barriers, the same patterns? Maybe you think these words don't make sense to you, that your situation is different, that you've done everything, but have you tried simply stopping, not desperately seeking, not controlling every detail, but trusting that things will happen at the right time in the right way, and that until then you have work to do? Because see, love is not a prize. It isn't validation that you are good enough or that everything in your life has finally worked out. It is an invitation for you to delve deeper into yourself and into the other. And I know it can be scary. The idea of opening up again, of allowing yourself to feel, is something that requires strength, especially after everything you've been through, right? But I'll tell you one thing. The pain of the past is not a warning for you to protect yourself. It is a lesson. It is a reminder that you are capable of surviving, learning, growing, and most importantly, of loving again with even more truth and intensity. Now tell me honestly, are you living your life as if love were already on its way? Because often we sabotage ourselves. We say we want it, but we act in a completely opposite way. Are you surrounding yourself with people and environments that uplift you, that create space for real connections? Or are you stuck in situations that only reinforce the idea that love is something distant, complicated, unattainable? I'm not here to give you easy answers, because love, true love, is not easy. It's not a fairy tale. It's real. It requires presence, commitment, vulnerability, and above all, it requires you to be willing to receive. Because sometimes what is missing is not love itself, but your ability to perceive that it is right there, in front of you. Maybe not in the way you idealized, but exactly as it should be. So what are you going to do? Will you keep waiting for everything to fall into your lap? Or will you start preparing, opening up, seeing the world with new eyes? Because I'm going to tell you something. When you are ready, you will know. It won't be a doubt. It won't be an uncertainty. It will be a calm certainty, a silent recognition that everything you've been through has brought you exactly here. And then will you be prepared for that? Because love, when it arrives, doesn't ask for permission. It enters, disrupts, transforms. It challenges you to be your best version, not because you need to be perfect, but because you need to be true. So tell me, are you ready for that? To accept what comes without reservations, without conditions, just with the trust that you deserve to live something extraordinary. If you feel that you are, then start now. Not tomorrow, not when circumstances change, but now. Start looking at your life with more attention. Notice the little things, the details, the moments you usually ignore, because it's there, in those spaces you least expect, that love may be waiting for you. And I want you to take this seriously, not as a pretty idea or a fleeting motivation, but as a commitment to be present, to take care of yourself, to open yourself to what life has to offer. Because believe me, when you do that, love will find its way to you, not because you are desperately seeking it, but because you are ready to receive it. If you have made it this far, probably something inside you is asking to be heard. Maybe it's that low voice you try to ignore, the one that whispers that you deserve more, that there is still something waiting for you. And I want you to pay attention to it now, because that's where it all begins. The moment you decide to listen to what's inside you, instead of letting the external noise distract you. Love is not about luck. It's not about being in the right place at the right time. It's about being whole, present, available. Can you honestly say you are like that? Or are you still carrying weights that aren't yours? Past relationships, unfulfilled expectations, or even the idea that love needs to be perfect to be true. Let me tell you something. Love is not perfect, it is real. And the real is messy, imperfect, human. But that's where the beauty lies, because love does not require you to be someone else. It requires you to be yourself, but your most authentic version. Not the version that is trying to please everyone, nor the version that hides out of fear of being hurt. The version that knows yourself, that knows what you want, that understands that loving is, above all, a choice. Are you willing to make this choice? Maybe you still have doubts. Maybe you're wondering if you really deserve something so profound, so transformational. And let me tell you something important. Love does not depend on what you think you deserve. It depends on what you are willing to accept. Because yes, you can choose to live in fear, doubt, and insecurity. But you can also choose to believe that something incredible is waiting for you. And that choice changes everything. Think with me. What are you doing today to create space for love? I'm not talking about apps, dates, or desperate efforts to find someone. I'm talking about the way you are living. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you allowing yourself to grow, learn, heal? Or are you just waiting for someone to come and solve everything for you? Because if it's the latter, let me tell you, that's not going to happen, and that's okay. Not because you don't deserve it, but because love doesn't work like that. Love is not something you win. It is something you build. It starts within you. And this is not a cliché. It's a truth many people don't want to accept. It's easier to blame the world, others, circumstances, than to look within and realize that often we are the ones sabotaging ourselves. That we are the ones not allowing ourselves to feel, live, risk. And this is not a judgment. It's an invitation for you to stop and look at yourself with honesty. What are you holding on to that no longer serves you? What stories are you repeating that should have ended by now? What fears are you allowing to control your choices? These questions are not easy, but they are necessary, because before you open the door to love, you need to open the door to yourself. And I know this can be difficult. Facing our own shadows, our own limitations, is never easy. But it is liberating, because when you do it, when you allow yourself to be who you really are, something changes. Not dramatically, but profoundly. And it is in this space of authenticity that love blossoms. So I ask you again, are you ready? Not for love itself, but for the work that comes before it. To face yourself, to open up, to believe that something better is possible. Because if you are, things start to happen. Not magically, but naturally. You begin to attract people who are aligned with who you really are, and not with who you are trying to be. You start to recognize opportunities that previously seemed invisible, and more importantly, you start to realize that love is not outside of you. It is inside. But this only happens if you allow it. And to allow means to let go of control. It means accepting that you cannot predict how things will happen, but trusting that they will. And that is difficult. I know. It is hard to let go of certainties, of expectations, but it is liberating, because when you let go, you create space. And it is in this space that love enters. So again, what are you going to do now? Will you continue carrying the same stories, the same fears, the same barriers, or will you decide that it is time to change? The decision is yours. It always has been. But once you decide, everything starts to change. Not all at once, not spectacularly, but in a real way. And the real, as I said before, is where love lives. If you feel that you are ready for this, then start today. Start now. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can be something small, like deciding to treat yourself with more kindness, like stopping to blame yourself for everything that didn't go right, like starting to look at the future with more hope and less fear. Because each small change you make within yourself creates an enormous impact on what happens around you. And I want you to remember this. You are worthy of love. Not because you've done something to deserve it, but because you exist. Because love is an essential part of who we are. It is not something you need to earn, conquer, or beg for. It is something you need to allow. And once you allow it, it finds its way to you. And now you need to make a decision. What are you going to do with everything you just heard? Will you let these words go unnoticed, like just another conversation you heard and found interesting, but didn't take seriously? Or will you really allow them to touch something deeper in you? Because deep down, you know it is time to do something different. Love is not something that simply happens when you least expect it. It is something you attract, that you build, but only when you put yourself in a position to receive it. And this is not about changing who you are or pretending to be something you don't feel. It is about accepting who you are now, with all your imperfections, and still believing that you deserve something true, something real. The change starts there. Life is made up of choices, and love is one of the most important choices you can make. Not because it is the answer to all your problems or because it will make you happy forever, but because it transforms you. It makes you grow, challenges you to step out of yourself, to look at others, and at the same time forces you to face what is inside you. It is not an easy path, but it is a path worth taking. So I ask you, what is stopping you now? What is still holding you back? Maybe it's fear, the fear of getting hurt, the fear of repeating past mistakes, the fear of opening up and not being reciprocated. These fears are valid, they are human, but you cannot let them be greater than your desire to experience something extraordinary. Because in the end, what hurts more? The risk of trying and failing, or the certainty of never having tried? I want you to take this seriously, not as a beautiful idea, but as a commitment to yourself. Don't wait for perfect conditions, for the right moment. For the ideal person, the right moment is now. Because love doesn't happen in the future, it happens in the present. It is here, in this instant, that you can start to change your story. It just takes one decision. And I know this can seem scary. You might be thinking, where do I start? What do I do with all that I am feeling now? Start with small steps. Start by being kinder to yourself. Start by identifying what you are still holding on to that no longer makes sense. Start by allowing yourself to believe that you deserve more than what you have allowed yourself to experience. If you feel like you are carrying something from the past, a grudge, a pain, a regret, ask yourself, does this still serve who I am today? Many times, we carry burdens that should have been left behind long ago simply because we don't know how to let go. But I want you to understand that you don't need to have all the answers now. Letting go is a process, and it begins with the decision to want to change. And what can you do to create space for love? Maybe it's stopping to insist on situations that don't make you happy. Maybe it's stepping out of your comfort zone, meeting new people, exposing yourself in ways you never considered before. Or maybe it's something even simpler, allowing yourself to feel without haste, without pressures, without unrealistic expectations. Because love, when it arrives, does not demand haste. It demands presence. It demands that you be whole, that you be willing to surrender, without trying to control every detail. This does not mean being naive or accepting less than you deserve. It means trusting. Trusting that what is meant for you will come. But meanwhile, you have an important job to do, taking care of yourself. And when you do this, something incredible happens, not in a magical way, but in a real way. You begin to see the world differently. You start to notice opportunities that previously seemed invisible. You begin to attract people who are aligned with who you truly are, not with who you thought you needed to be. But all of this begins with a decision. The decision to be open. The decision to believe that love is possible even after all you have been through. Because no matter how difficult it is to believe this now, I want you to know that love is still there. It hasn't gone away. It hasn't given up on you. It is waiting for you to say yes, for you to be ready. So tell me, are you ready? Are you willing to leave behind what no longer serves you? Are you willing to trust that the best is yet to come, even if you can't see it now? Because if you are, I want you to do something today, right now, something small but significant. Maybe it's writing about what you're feeling. Maybe it's making a decision you've been putting off for a long time. Maybe it's simply looking in the mirror and saying, I am ready, and I want you to share this. I want to know what is going through your mind right now. What has this message awakened in you? What are the steps you feel you need to take? Write them in the comments. Your story matters, and it can inspire others who are going through the same thing. And before you go, I want to ask you something simple. If this message touched you, leave your like. Not because I want numbers, but because it helps this message reach more people. People who might need to hear exactly what you just heard. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now. Here we talk about what really matters, about what transforms. And I want to keep walking by your side, bringing you reflections that will help you live a more connected, more authentic, more love-filled life. Now it's up to you. Love is waiting. What are you going to do?